Hello.
La- Lanz Pierce,
Hi. How are you?
welcome to the Talking Talent podcast. You amazing, fantastic, beautiful lady.
Thank you for having me. It's very exciting to be on here.
I'm absolutely honored. I have to say that. You are such one of those people who, when you meet you once, you have that impact. I think on people for the rest of their lives. So, whenever you said you would come on, I was delighted. So, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Seriously, I've had a chance to check out some of the previous episodes, so I understand the level of incredible talent and inspiration you've had thus far on the show.
Thank you. That's such a credit to me coming from somebody with your sort of CV and your bio. Your bio should just say this: giver. You know what? Because that is the greatest gift anyone can have, and you're a person who just gives so much to so many people at so many levels. Like whether you're on stage, like warming up for Snoop Dogg, or whether you're just having a chat over a cup of tea, you're a person who is you're such a good listener, and you're such a person who you've got something about you which is just it just makes other people's lives better by being around your aura.
I appreciate that. I just believe that, the real reason that we're here is to be a vessel of the light, and the light, I don't even necessarily mean that in some type of a um, traditional way where we've been taught through our upbringing, our societal experiences, whether that be religion or not. I mean that as far as there is an energy field that connects us all, right? And that's this ability to like choose our paths, and we need to be united as a people, right? As a people, there's so much going on in the news right now. I can get started on it, but we need to be united as a people. And so if we're not willing to share and give to each other, we're going to set ourselves back in a very scary way.
I completely agree, and I think the word community is something which it's such a powerful word because it means to hold in common. And when you look at you in New York, for example, that is your community, and you're in a community which is so highly stacked and so closely packed together that the thing that you all hold in common is that you share these small islands. And on those small islands is every race, color, creed, gender, everything you can imagine. And in that example, in that most extreme of examples, people must carry the light within them and share the light with others and receive it from others as well.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The thing about New York that makes it special is that, whether there's a disparity between wealth or the lack of in a financial capacity or not, we're all within, like a 5 street block radius from each other, in the sense that, for instance, I live in a neighborhood very specifically called the East Village, which, in the 80s was a very scary place to be. And they've gentrified the city so much. But now, you have on the same block that you do, city public housing, which, they've done a really great job making cleaner and safer. But, on that same block on the next corner is a very quaint, discrete building where, there's 4 floors, and each of those floors is its own loft with, these gorgeous high floor to ceiling windows.
Wow.
And so the essence of what I'm trying to get at is you're bringing this sense of togetherness once you walk out of your house, whether you walk out of that first building I mentioned or you walk out of this luxury apartment. We're all in these streets together, and therefore there's this sense of being, right? Even so, during these times when people are quarantined, and if you're solo and you're single and you're by yourself, even when you go outside to an essential grocery store for whatever your cause is, even if you're not speaking to somebody, there is a language and a music to New York City and to the streets and into seeing people out, that you feel like you're in this unspoken sense of, yeah, community and conversation.
Yeah, and I love that you said that about the music of the city, because for me, the most important thing that exists is sound. And this is something that you really carry within you is the magic of sound, because in the beginning, God said, "Let there be light," which means that light came before sound. He said, "Let there be light." So sound already existed before light came, and sound. In my book it says light informs, but sound transforms. Me and you both know what it's like to be in a club or at an event where that beat drops, or that sort of those strings come in, and it just takes you to a new world. Sound is the most important thing, and this is why going into the silence through meditation and all these other things is equally as important. The absence of sound is as important as the sound. And I've got a strange thing that probably doesn't appeal to most other people in this world, but I never say curse words, and I have never said them. Like, I have never said the F word or things like that, because I don't know why, actually. It's just never resonated with me, and it's never felt normal coming out of my mouth. And I think that those words are unnecessary, because the words that we say, whenever we say something, we're casting spells. And the things, it's like we can talk things into existence. So why not talk into existence the beauty around our world, and make the things that the sound that we create, which will create our world, be sounds of positivity and kindness and love and compassion and empathy and community.
It's so true. It's funny. I've been studying Kabbalah for the last 2 years or so, and I'm not sure if you're familiar.
I am indeed, yeah.
But when I was first introduced to Kabbalah through friends, mutual friends, I had the preconceived notions of what I see in media, right? So there's like a lot of celebrity culture around it, and it's kind of like, it's been depicted in the past, at least how I had seen it, as kind of more of this, in cool crowd thing. But when I really jumped into it and I really got connected to it, what I realized that I loved about it so much is that it's quite the opposite. It really, it's the practice and the study of exactly what and how we started, which is giving. It's about the essence of listening, and that the further you get into learning it, the more you realize you don't know. And there's this beauty in realizing that we're eternal students, right? That we're essentially we're finished on this planet whenever we stop being the student and the receiver as much as the giver, right? And so it's a very interesting, I'm always very fascinated between masculine and feminine energy. It's a topic that fascinates me, and I've learned so much about it through Kabbalah and then through my own experience in life. Starting off as a young female rapper signed to a major record label where the predominant essence is the straightforward kind of masculine energy as we may know it. But as I've grown through my career and turned music into and performing into visuals and directing, and I've connected to so many different arts and mediums of sharing and giving, I realized that masculine and feminine energy truly exists in both of us, and it's really the essence of giving and receiving, and we all need that balance, and we need to perpetuate this new way of experiencing that balance in all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that my new book was actually about that, about the empowerment of the feminine, which is actually the empowerment of the being able to receive as well. Because I always say to people, so whenever you go for lunch with me, I will always buy 100% of the time. And I insist that people allow me to buy them lunch, because if they don't allow me, then they're denying me the gift of giving. Okay, you're receiving, and that's awesome, but by me giving you your lunch, I'm also getting the gift, and that's the gift of giving. And this is why we must be open to giving and receiving, so that we have a balance within the masculine and the feminine at both sides. And the more in balance you are, the more your path through life is more easily navigated. And it's interesting that you say this about the Kabbalah, because I remember one of the first conversations I had with you was about numerology and life path numbers and stuff like that. But gematria, which is a deeper type of numerology, is actually it's part of the Kabbalah. And I wonder, have you come across? Have you gone down that path yet?
I'm such a student of this practice and discipline that I make sure that as much as I learn, I recognize that there's like a certain way that I need to go about learning. And so I'll say that I know some about it, but I don't know enough about that essence yet in Kabbalah to really to go too deep into it. I think that, you know, it's really important that the foundational elements are addressing the ego. And so I've only been studying Kabbalah for 2 years, and at least for me, ego and addressing the ego is could be a lifelong
Alone.
discipline, let alone for 2 years. So I've really, you know, I think about those movies when I was a kid. When I started watching, I was always fascinated by martial arts. I was fascinated by the discipline and the practice. And, you know, whenever you watch these you know, films, especially the early 90s one, it's like, you know, the young student goes in and he or she is ready to just fight, you know, and the teacher makes them like balance plates on their hands, and they're doing this for like a year plus, and the guy's like, what's the point? When am I going to get to the actual fighting? So I think I would answer your question by saying I'm still balancing plates.
Yeah, good answer. Good analogy as well, actually. But I think that certain knowledge comes to you at the right time as well. I'm one of the people who don't really go searching in front of particular subject matters. I think that the knowledge that I need and the subject matters that I should look at certain stages of my life are sort of delivered to me when I'm ready.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
I was going to ask you, you were talking about egos, and I know you have been working with a complete who's who of performers, from Snoop Dogg to Lady Gaga, Nile Rodgers, like legends of the game. And what I find about the most successful people that I know is that they're also the most humble people, and they have actually got their balance. They have their egos sort of in balance for a lot of the time. Did you those names I listed? Would that be correct of those people, or what would be the characteristic which has sort of helped them sort of propel themselves to the number one spot?
Yeah, I don't know how much I can speak to their ego, you know, because the essence and the pure being of a performer, of getting on stage, is there is a persona that you take on when you get on stage versus when you're in your personal life. And that separation is actually the healthiest mechanism you can give yourself. So when you step on stage, it is all about ego. It really is about, I mean, think about what it is that you're doing. You're acting as a conduit of sound, information, light, but it is all about look at me, because the vessel that you are in that moment is, you know, absorbing not only all the energy of the room, but then it's emitting it out. So I you know, as performers, I think we're groomed to grow our ego. It's only been, so I can't really speak to them in their personal lives. I'm sure they've all had their own disciplines and how to find that. And I think, you know, if you look at a lot of the musicians that exist and the stories that are, sometimes we wonder, like, you know, the more tragic even ones where, you know, some of the artists and the stars haven't lasted as long as they should, and they have such gifts. I think it's because there really is a very delicate balance between when you're on stage and when you're off stage, especially in the practice of being an entertainer, you know, which is why, by the way, I really directed a lot of my energy as well to growing my craft into filmmaking, because it's an opportunity to storytell and to use a lot of that you know, same passion, but through empowering also this cast, and this story becomes bigger than just yourself. So for me, that's also been a healthy way that balance has happened for me, because I can only speak to me, I think.
Yeah. What is the power of a story for you?
Oh, wow. What a question. The power of a story is connectivity. It's about finding this common thread that we all somehow recognize, that whatever the storyline is, that there's these human emotions that somehow, no matter who we are, what background, race, color, creed, or gender, we all want to be loved. We all want to be, you know, acknowledged. We all have trials and tribulations. I think the story is the unifier.
Yeah, and the power of, I was actually at Uluru, which is also called Ayers Rock, at the centre of Australia, and it's one of the 7 chakra points of our planet. And someone told me that this is the story about the serpent god and how he came and blah blah blah, and this is how the Aboriginal people of Australia tell their story, and it's a way of passing generation across millennia. And this was just like some big guide who was paid whatever minimum wage to tell tourists a story. But whatever way he said that, it just resonated with me so heavy. And it was just his phraseology, like across millennia. So this story is being told like this will get us through to the next 1,000 years and the next 1,000 years. And our people will always know it, and they will always understand where they came from. And ever since then, everything I do, it one way or another, has to be storytelling related, because storytelling is the best mechanism for the human to be able to disseminate and understand and remember information.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think to add to that, now that I'm really sitting on that thought, I think the power of story, though, also is to shift the paradigm, right? Is to change and not amend history, because you can never amend what's been before, but certainly you can write a new way for the future. I often think about how many times the things that we know, depending on where we grow up or who our parents are, and what our whether it be societal, religion, just the different things that you're even just as a whole, like what we're taught, that again, what a man should be or a woman should be, how much of that is really our own thoughts versus how much of that is from the stories that we've been told. If we're showing little children Disney films when they're 3 and 4, and the girl is always somehow the damsel in distress rescued by this handsome prince, how do we then go and empower this narrative of the female hero? How do we change? So I do think that story is also important as much as it is to remember and to celebrate where you're from. I also think it's important to shift the culture and to recognize where there are opportunities for growth.
Absolutely. I mean, I see a lot of I didn't grow up with Disney. I'm one of the few. But when I look at those now, sometimes, like I went to see the Lion King's 25th anniversary release or something with my wife, because she grew up with Disney. And I look at that and I think, wow, I'm so happy I didn't see that stuff growing up, because I see it as just manipulation.
Yeah.
It's like, this is who, like, depending on what character you sort of see yourself as. If I'm a man, then I see myself as the damsel in distress, because I sort of identify more with the woman that's in, or the princess or whatever. I will start to take on that type of mannerism as I grow through my life, but it's mostly going to impact young girls.
Yeah.
And it's designed in that way, where she's usually white with long flowing, or blonde flowing locks, and pretty, and a lot of the girls will want to associate with her, and a lot of the lads will see this big sort of handsome man jumping off his horse, and they'll want to associate with him. And it's complete specific manipulation and leading to, and it's usually like Aladdin. They always end up killing like the Muslim invader or whatever it is, and I'm like, wow, this is some different next level stuff, man, that's going on in the minds of young kids.
Yeah, it's the Matrix. And to shift from talking about the female experience for a second, just even exactly talking about what a young boy might see when the characters that are portrayed in, whether it be in Disney or in other films, the emotional story arc, right? The development of character and what that is usually very surface level, right? It's exactly what you said. It's more about like the tension of an opposing force, and therefore like the physical fight breaks out, or like the test of wills of competition. And so that becomes the story arc, and that in itself, by the way, is a complete repetition and minimizing way of the male experience, that the only thing that they're good for is to want to beat each other up, and that's man. Like,
yeah,
it's so minimizing for the power also of the man experience. So story has to be that right now, where we have it, because we're the first generation that has information like this. Think about it. That it, so we have to recognize we're so new. I think that we get high-headed about things like, we live in a world where you can order something in the push of a button, and we think we're so advanced, but we're not. We're so new. We're so new.
I'm so happy you're saying this, because I've been trying to get this across to people for years. I says, do you know what? I think this is almost like a dark ages, where just because it's less dark than it was 50 years ago or 100 years ago, like we're literally coming out of what was an ice age. One of the things that I believe is that we're like little children who are just sort of opening our eyes to the world, and all of a sudden we're downloading millions of ideas around technology which can make our lives better, but we think we're at the furthest sort of advancements of ever society that's ever existed. But I don't know if you've got into this with the Kabbalah, but when you start looking through the Akashic records and all that side of it as well, you can see that there's a saying that says there's nothing new under the sun. And that applies to us as well. We were here before, and we were a lot more advanced before, and now we're coming back around again. And whenever it comes to just men and women but in the same workplace, we're only 40 years into an experiment which will probably last for 400 years.
100%.
So let's be kind. Like let's respect the man who's trying to deal with being around women. Let's respect the women who's trying to find her place in an environment which is probably male dominated, and let's let them sort of blossom and flower on their own terms. Because it's whenever people get to be true to who they are is when they shine brightest. But whenever we try to get them to fit the paradigm which is being delivered to them through Disney or whatever other mainstream media sources, that's when people start to choke. And I believe one thing that we sort of discard too easily is the essence of depression, as opposed to expression. We talk about people being depressed like, oh, it's just another thing, but I think that is such a big word to say. The moment that you are depressed and you feel it and you start expressing that, we really should help that human being and give them all the help and compassion and love in the world, and not just discard it as they're having a bad time or they've broken up with their partner or something.
Yeah.
Like, let's really help that person to go from being turning inwards and being depressed, and let's help them to sort of flower and be expressive again.
100%. And we also have to steer away from the victim mentality, though, right? So, for instance, everybody who knows me and knows me personally knows that I am a huge voice and advocate for, women, being a woman who's had the opportunity to do many things. But I also think it's important not to take the victim approach of like, the mentality of, well, because of this, I won't be treated like this, because in some interesting way, we perpetuate that further, right?
I'm recording this podcast through Anchor. And if you're considering doing a podcast and you haven't heard about Anchor, then let me tell you, it's the easiest way to do a podcast. So let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute the podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. And it's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. Definitely check it out. Download the app now from the store.
So it's important to acknowledge it and recognize it, but to understand too that the only way, and to connect to your comment about mental health, is that the only way forward, right, is to recognize something, acknowledge it, embrace it, but then not to stew in it, right? You have to find, therefore, what that next place is that brings you through it, So I agree. I think mental health and mental health goes back to information again.
Yeah, good point. It's funny you say that. I have got a mantra, and it's the one thing that actually changed my life. Is whenever I was 16, I decided that I would never be a victim of anything. I said everything that goes wrong in my life, I'm taking all the blame, no matter what. It's my fault. I could have been better. I should have not been in that position. I should have been, whatever happens, it's on me. And I'm never going to point my finger at anyone else. But I also says everything that goes right, I'm taking all the credit. And that when I was 16, that has changed my life and taken me out of the unemployment black spot of Europe to this extent that I lived the life of my dreams.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing, because I was actually just looking at this yesterday, because for many years throughout the UK, and there used to be signs on doors and at pubs and at various sort of public places where it used to say no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. And it was basically like, it was literally that. It was going, there's no blacks allowed in here and there's no dogs allowed, but more, like lower than a dog is Irish. So we definitely don't want them. And it's, in a weird way, Irish people have always had that sort of sense of brotherhood with black people, actually, because even though, and a lot of people don't realize this either, is that Irish people were actually slaves as well. We were sent across to the plantations as well. And it's why when I'm in America, I, for some reason, always end up talking to Jewish people and black people. I'm not talking with them, just hanging out with them. And it's almost like a magnet. And it's such an easy conversation. And we're not talking about poor me, poor this, but we just have a laugh and we just hang out. Yeah. And I've always says, even though it was no blacks, no dogs, no Irish, I've always says, I don't care what has happened before or the fact that I have chosen this life, this body to come into at this time. I'm going to make the most of the bad circumstances I have, and I'm going to flip it and try and shine so that others who are behind me can see that if he can do it, then I can do it.
Yeah, I think that there's a sense of soulfulness too, right? That gets bred into our DNA when, there's been an oppressed peoples for, generational trauma and all those things come into play. But I definitely think that there's this special, again, going back to music, going back to soul, and also, survival instincts. Who's to say that the way that we think about adaptations inside of, our bodies as humans, the way that we think about, animals who over time had to adapt to their surroundings and grow a different claw or a fin or whatever. The point is, in our own beings as creatures, we do that also, not just with physical, adaptations, but with I believe truly with our resilience and our spirits. And so I think that there's just a sense of a recognizing inside of those communities that you just mentioned, where there's that soulfulness and there's that adaptation that's happened through generations, and we can all recognize that special ability to excel, survive, and maintain.
Yeah, I have to ask you this question. What's the best advice that I'm asking you for your mother's mother. What's the best advice she ever gave you?
From my mother's mother, from my grandmother.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't get to know my grandmother that well. She lived in New Mexico, and I did have nice conversations with her on the phone, and it's so interesting and simple. I've never had anybody ask me that, but she just told me, she would always say to me, I was raised by a single mom, so my mom, had to play all the roles, and she would say to me, your mother works so hard. And she just would always say to me, make it easy, make it easy on her. Like, stand up and be accountable. Right. And that's so simple, right? Like, stand up and be accountable. But I think what she really was trying to say was, you have to be, you have to take responsibility even as a kid for, who you are. And that translates into life. And I think accountability has been a huge, it's very freeing, actually.
Yeah.
Accountability, it's freeing.
Yeah. Because there's the boundaries don't really exist. I mean, that, like, I see you as a person who, you're a results oriented individual. Like, okay, we have these problems. How do we find the solutions? Let's just find them. There is a way around this. Let's just find out what it is without standing on the same spot and stomping our feet.
Yes. Or without pointing fingers and blame at each other. It always makes me laugh when when I'm on conference calls, and, I've started this creative agency that I have now that's allowed me to bridge my talents as an artist and performer in front of the camera, and as a director and creator behind the camera, to continue that essence of giving, right? So working with brands and being able to help them tell their story, and still being very much so the artist in that paradigm, the artist that's creating. But it's so funny when I'm on these conference calls, sometimes there's, a roadblock. And so people get stuck in saying, well, if you would have done this, if you would have said that, and I'll entertain it for a second. But, I think that I'm a big believer and perpetuator of okay, all right, great, but that's not getting us any further. Imagine if our government did that.
Yeah.
Imagine if the government wasn't, it was more so about the proactive agendas, of the people rather than the personal and political, agendas of the privileged, right? When I say privilege, I don't even mean with capitalism. I mean the privilege as far as power, because power is also a new sense of racism or separatism or segregation.
It's so correct, and I think the difference between Europe and America particularly is in Europe we can very easily see who the elite are, the royal families and these sort of bloodlines or whatever. But in America, where everyone apparently went over there and sort of pulled each other up by the bootstraps, it's a lot more hard to see these sort of lineages of power. But when you're around these people and you see and you get and you sort of get a glimpse into how they live their life, you're like, wow, man, there's levels to this. And the sort of when you look at people like the Clinton family, you look at the Trump family, and you look at the sort of multi-generational wealth and power that they've been able to maintain and manage and control through multiple generations. They're as powerful as the royal families and those lineages across Europe.
Yeah, I agree. I would expand upon that though and say that there is another force that we're all contributors of, that we all buy into, and therefore that we are actually fueling those families or those people, and that's media. So when Trump, before he was the president of this country, as much as he was a businessman, he was very much so a socialite, and on
Exactly.
reality TV shows, and making comments that were sure to ruffle feathers and therefore create headlines. And so we have this obsession with celebrity. We have this obsession with media, and so that in its own way has become an unfact checked space where, like, because there is so much freedom in information, which I'm all for, but we have to be also back to accountable, because there's so much information, some of it being correct, some of it being incorrect. How do we filter that, right? And so all this incorrect information goes out, and now we have a new separatism inside of cultures, because this one group of people believes in this misinformation, and then they vote for that person who perpetuates that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the whole thing about about the internet. Whenever the internet was spawned, it was a free for all, and everyone had a voice, and everyone could share their opinion. Whether you agreed with it or not is up to you. However, now it's becoming more and more narrow, and the things that you want to, we've actually the COVID-19 has actually seen it completely amplified. Where we're only going to take the World Health Organization's perspective on this. But the World Health Organization has been contradicting themselves back and forth. So that's another example of like what is truth and whose truth are we listening to? Because I know the truth that I believed a year ago, like as an individual, I now don't even believe some of the stuff I was so intent on understanding with the foundations of my existence. And it's just, I see myself, and you mentioned on this earlier, I always see myself as a student and a teacher. Every person I meet, I hopefully can teach them something, but I know for sure they can teach me something. And I think that by actually getting into proper conversations in my locale with people like yourself, whenever I'm lucky enough to cross your path, I can actually find out my own truth better than I can from getting bombarded with these sort of shouters on Twitter and social media and mainstream media. Yeah. Because just by listening to you and your story, I can get as much depth of education as I can get from listening to a guy at Uluru talking about how they use stories to sort of pass information across millennia.
Wow. Yeah, it's a powerful, it's an important time to be proactive. It's important, and this is the, for me, one of the, crystallizing pieces of information is, it is important for everybody to have play their part, right? To be proactive. Because again, if we tell people that they're inconsequential because they're not somehow knowledgeable enough, and we, don't want to hear their voice because they haven't somehow reached some capacity that we value, that our value propositions are based on. Ready? 10,000 followers on Instagram. Okay, that must mean that they are somehow, worthy of my attention, or
Yeah.
whatever those criteria is. But we have to be able to hear the voice of humanity in the guy in the grocery store who's packing the bags, in the people who are the service members of our country, who build our homes, who build our, who clean our floors, who, those people, we have to see them too. We have to.
It's actually, I have a thing that I not only do I see them, but I hold them up, because I hold them up for many reasons. Number one, they are the people who can see everything that goes on within an organization. The cleaners in a building, I know them all by name, and I know them all by story every weekend, what they're up to. For me, they're the real seers and organizers, and they're the people who crosses all the paths. So they're the most connected people around. But at the same time, as I said at the start of this, I says the most important people in any organization now are the cleaners, because without the cleaners, these viruses and germs and everything else passes. So the people who we look down on the most are actually the people who are the most important, and also the people who are the most connected.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to not even have the common sense to see that, and to disrespect these people, or not even see them or acknowledge them, is such a foolish thing to do. You
How
know?
about how about I would challenge people to say that they're actually fearful when they don't feel like they should, or that they can, or that there's a reason to interact with those people, that they're actually responding to fear. And of course somebody may say, what are you talking about? What fear? They're just, I have no connection. But the fear is somehow that, we were taught that if we don't keep ourselves insulated in these bubbles, right, these bubbles of cool or wealth or this or that, and we somehow open that up, that we're going to let something in that's going to shift or change us or diminish us. And that's fear. That fear that what you have is not sustainable and is not yours really, and rather it's just this, it's all exterior. So if your power comes internally, and you're like, just like you said, in your ability to choose your life path, to say, that whatever happens to me or around me is I have to be accountable. And then whatever is great, I also have to take accountability for. That's you choosing to be the director of your ship, and nothing external can shake you. If you lose a job, get a job, it doesn't matter. Your ability to go out there and recreate and create whatever you want is internal. So that fear of, if I allow this person into my circle who's beneath me or lower than me from what I see, somehow that's going to diminish my cred or diminish my cool. That's fear. Then you're not really of it from inside.
Yeah, no, I'll read this to you. The second best thing that happened to me today, after you getting on this call with you, is the cleaner from Epicenter, Fernando. He's a beautiful man, and he's an immigrant like myself. He comes from Chile in South America, and he says, "You're a star, Patrick. Keep going. Miss you at Epicenter, bro. God bless you." And
Mm.
that message from Fernando, like the fact that the cleaner misses me and he's telling me to keep going, keep shining, that's winning in life.
Yeah.
When the
Yeah.
cleaner is reaching out to me saying he misses me and to keep going, he's proud of me. I'm like, man, this is exactly why the 16-year-old version of me decided not to be a victim.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You know,
Exactly. Exactly.
can I give you a compliment?
Please.
And
Thank you.
actually, I seen this in you when we met at Epicenter, and people listening to this can hear me and you, and we could talk for days nonstop. But you have something in you which I don't see in most people, and and I mean this as a compliment, and I hope my Irishness gets it across as such. But and you're one of the most I can imagine that you're one of the most beautiful people to have a ledge overlooking beautiful sights to just sit there and be quiet with. Do you understand what I mean?
I don't know how to respond to that. I just get a really special vision of this like beautiful, lookout point. But can you actually share with me what you mean by that?
So let's imagine, like, let's say me, I'm backpacking through Brazil, and I meet this girl in a hostel. Her name's Lanz Pierce. I'm like, what's happening? What's the crack? Oh, we good on, and then we like, I'm going towards Santiago in Chile. You're also going halfway that way, so we spend the next month backpacking together, right?
Mm-hmm.
First couple of days we're talking, but then we actually get to know each other so well that you're one of those people who it feels so nice to just sit there and be quiet with.
That's funny that you say that.
You know
That's
what I
funny.
mean? And
I
so
I
there's some
love
people
that.
who just always want to fill the space, and they always want to talk, and they always want to. But I know that you have such a beautiful mind, but you also have an even more beautiful heart. And whenever you get the sort of clutter out of your mind, and you get an essence, and you get comfortable, and you get calm and trust with someone, I think you're one of those people who's just great to sit there and just say nothing with.
Thank you. That's a beautiful thing to say, and it's funny that you say that because I have this thing that when I have personal relationships, whether it be with a partner or just even a friend, I always say you have these moments where you turn to them. You might be on in the car driving, and there is a couple minutes of silence, and you turn to them and you smile because like, hey, we've really reached this certain level and depth in our friendship or a personal relationship with even with a lover that like that you're really there when you've gotten to that space where you don't always have to have something to say. That's interesting that you picked up on that. That's definitely something that's a theme in my life. I always say, I know this is going to be funny, but I always say two things: that if we haven't had a disagreement, an argument, right, and haven't gotten to that space yet and can't yet be in silence, we don't really know each other. And when I say disagreement, I don't mean a fight. I mean like two people that have different opposing maybe backgrounds or experiences, and so they have different thoughts about it. Can we get through that together to a better outcome? And can we just be in each other's space and be quiet? So that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I actually think because you have such a great worldview, you're a person as well who you could disagree on things with, and also, as I say, and I hope I'm getting this across, I think you're a person who's just good to be around with and just say nothing, and I think that's probably one of the most best compliments I can ever give anyone, and I seen this in you from the first moment, because what the first time I seen you was actually. I was actually over getting a cup. I was actually having a stressful, busy day in Epicenter, and I was at my desk, and I had to run around and get a cup of tea. And I came out, and there was this like ball of white light on a stage just coming at me, and I was like, "What the hell is that, man?" And it was you up doing your warm up session for the gig, which was on later on. And whatever work I was doing, I was like, "Wow!" So I went down, and I got talking to Amber, and I was like, "What? Tell me who are you people?" You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it was, and then I was just chatting to you for like maybe 45 minutes, and I was like, "Right, you are going to do your thing, and I have to run around, at least close down my laptop, and at least make myself half presentable if a party is going to start in like 20 minutes." And and from that moment, I could always see that there's this. You've as you say, you're a person who can light up a stage so bright. Yet you're a paid person who you could be in Brazil with, just overlooking a cliff or whatever over a beach and just say nothing with for like 2 hours, and just it feels normal.
Well, I'll tell you, thank you very much. And I'll tell you this right now, what I wouldn't give to sit at a beach right now.
Yeah.
Or to sit anywhere on a backpacking trip at any beautiful outlook point. I think, we're all itching to be able to see our friends in faraway places again. And we're all, you know, longing for the ability to go explore and be travelers again, but in due time. So the visual is nice. Thanks. It gives me something to look forward to.
Yeah, and the thing is, this is so unrelatable for us because in Sweden we have freedom.
Yeah.
So literally, like whatever I've done with this, it's like 22 degrees, I think, in Stockholm now. So as I was walking home, I just seen these horses jumping around, and I thought I need to get back quick for this podcast with Lanz, and then I'm going back down to our small beach, just like 200 meters from our apartment here. So I shall send a blessing to you from that beach, and on that, I just want to say, I know you're busy, and I really appreciate you giving us your time and sharing your thoughts and insights and wisdom and love and compassion for this world that you are having abundance. And just say thank you just for being you.
Thank you. Seriously, thank you. That means a lot to me. I'm grateful for the opportunity to come on to this show and get a chance to you and I for us to have a moment to connect and catch up. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you.
Yeah, and let's talk again soon, because I really appreciate you. I really do.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. All right.
God bless, darling.
I send you all the same love back, and love to all the listeners. I hope that, whomever listens to this, there's something special in it for somebody. And yeah, let's chat soon.
Absolutely. God bless you. Take care, darling.